tests have confirmed that human remains found last year are those of the last Tsar's two missing children. It proves that all of Nicholas II's immediate family...
For more than a century, the fall of the Romanov dynasty has been told as a closed chapter of history. An empire collapsed, a royal family vanished, and the world was given a story it was expected to accept. But what if that story was incomplete, and official records raised more questions than answers? Then, decades later, modern DNA testing entered the story. What it revealed didn't just solve a mystery, it exposed a truth so dangerous that it had been deliberately hidden. But why would a powerful monarchy work so hard to keep this discovery locked away? Join us as we find out the truth about one of history's most tragic events, the Romanovs' mysterious disappearance. The story of the Romanov family's disappearance was one of the most mysterious tragedies of the 20th century. The Romanovs had ruled Russia for more than 300 years. They had power, wealth, and position. Then they lost everything. After the Russian Revolution of 1917, the last Tsar, Nicholas II, gave up his throne. He left his role as ruler and agreed to let a new government take over. That change was meant to bring peace and reform. Instead, it brought more chaos and conflict. What happened to the family next became a mystery that lasted for decades. After Nicholas II's abdication, the former emperor and his family were moved from place to place. They first stayed under house arrest in a palace near what is now St. Petersburg. The provisional government that replaced Nicholas wanted to keep the family safe from political enemies. But that government soon lost power to a more radical group known as the Bolsheviks. The Bolsheviks were determined to reshape Russia completely and eliminate any danger of a return to royal rule. As the civil war grew, the Romanovs were moved again, this time to Tobolsk in Siberia. There, the family lived in isolation, watched by guards and cut off from the world they once led. In April 1918, the family was again moved, this time to a house in the industrial city of Yekaterinburg, high in the Ural Mountains. The Bolsheviks had renamed the place the Ipatiev House and turned it into a prison. Music. The former Tsar, his wife Alexandra, and their 5 children lived there with a few loyal servants. Life for the Romanovs had changed totally. They could no longer walk freely, speak openly, or plan for their future. The world outside was in turmoil, and the family was trapped inside. They had no contact with friends or allies who might help them. By the middle of 1918, the situation outside was even more dangerous. Forces opposing the Bolsheviks were moving closer to Yekaterinburg. The Bolsheviks feared that these forces might try to free the Romanovs and use them as a symbol to rally others against the new government. To prevent this possibility, the local Soviet authorities, leaders of the Bolshevik government in the region, decided that the Romanovs must be eliminated. Some historians believe that the order came from the highest levels of the Bolshevik leadership. Others say it was mainly the local commanders who made the decision. The exact origin of the order remained a subject of debate for many years, because no one in a position of power spoke openly about it at the time. On the night of July 16 to 17, 1918, at the Ipatiev House, the Romanov family was taken to a basement room under the pretext that they needed to be moved for their safety. Instead, a group of Bolshevik guards and officers stood ready. The family was ordered to stand in a line, and without warning, the guards opened fire. The gunfire was intense and chaotic. Some family members passed away quickly from gunshots. Others were still alive when the bullets stopped. The guards turned to other weapons, stabbing those who remained breathing. The violence was complete and brutal. The Romanovs and several of their loyal servants lost their lives that night. After the massacre, those responsible attempted to conceal what had happened. they loaded the bodies onto a truck and drove them to a forest outside the city. There, in what became known as Koptiaki Forest, the remains were buried in unmarked graves. Later, the bodies were disfigured, burned, and covered further to make it harder for anyone to find or identify them. The Bolshevik leaders and the Soviet government did not want the truth to be widely known. They feared that revealing the full details would trigger protest or sympathy for the Romanovs. Because of this deliberate effort to hide the burial sites and the details of the brutal act, accurate information was not available for many years. For decades after the execution, the Soviet government publicly denied what had happened to the Romanov family. They released only limited or misleading details. Rumors spread across Europe and other parts of the world. Many people could not believe that all members of the royal family had been executed. Stories grew that at least one child might have survived, especially the youngest daughter. These rumors were powerful because there was no physical proof to disprove them. Music. The lack of evidence created space for imagination. Some people held on to hope that the Romanovs might still be alive in secret. Others thought that the bodies had been hidden so well that they would never be found. During this long period of uncertainty, many stories and legends developed. Some involved imposters claiming to be surviving Romanov children. These claims gained public attention because of the mystery surrounding the fate of the family. Without official proof of death or the location of remains, people questioned official accounts. Some believed secret rescue missions had succeeded. Others thought the Bolsheviks might have hidden survivors to use them for political leverage. The world watched and waited, but the truth remained buried with the bodies. It was not until the loosening of Soviet control in the late 1980s and early 1990s that the story began to come into clearer focus. In 1979, a gravesite was discovered near Yekaterinburg, but it was not publicly revealed until after the fall of the Soviet regime. In 1991, the remains from that site were later exhumed and identified. However, the full truth did not emerge until many years later, when additional remains were found and more advanced DNA analysis was possible. The discovery of the mass grave. In 1991, an extraordinary discovery took place in a forest close to Yekaterinburg, Russia. For many decades, historians and scientists had been trying to uncover the burial place of Russia's last imperial family. The exact location had been kept a tightly guarded secret for years and was known only to a small number of people within the Soviet Union. After the Soviet Union collapsed, previously hidden information slowly came to light. A geologist, along with others who had heard long-standing rumors about a hidden grave, began searching the surrounding forest area. Their efforts led them to a shallow burial site containing human bones. Soon after, Russian authorities stepped in and officially secured the site. As excavation began and the digging went deeper, a large collection of skeletal remains was uncovered. This discovery marked the start of a major effort to finally solve one of the greatest mysteries surrounding the fate of the Romanov family. The burial site, often described as a mass grave, contained the remains of 9 individuals. At first, no one could say for certain who these people were. The bones had been buried together in a crude, unmarked pit near what was once a mining area. There were no signs, symbols, or markers to explain whose remains they might be. Investigators suspected that the bones could belong to members of the Romanov family and their loyal servants, but suspicion alone was not enough. Scientific evidence was required. Each bone was carefully removed, documented, and labeled so it could be studied later. This process was slow and difficult because the remains were extremely old, fragile, and in many cases incomplete after spending decades underground. To identify the remains accurately, scientists needed methods that could overcome the damage caused by time. Traditional identification techniques were not reliable in this case because the bones were too degraded to allow conclusions based on physical features alone. However, advances in DNA analysis offered new hope. DNA is found in nearly every cell of the body and contains genetic information unique to each individual. Although DNA can break down over time, scientists had developed techniques to extract usable genetic material from old bones. These techniques allowed them to compare DNA from the remains with DNA from known living relatives. This comparison became the key to confirming whether the bones truly belonged to the Romanov family. The first stage of DNA testing focused on organizing and categorizing the remains. Scientists used a method known as short tandem repeat analysis, or STR testing. This technique examines specific regions of DNA that differ between individuals. STR analysis helped researchers determine how the skeletons were related to one another. The results showed that among the 9 sets of remains, there were 2 adults, 1 male and 1 female, and 3 children who were female. The genetic patterns clearly suggested the presence of a family group. Nuclear DNA analysis indicated that the 2 adults were most likely the parents of the children and that the children were siblings. The remaining 4 skeletons showed no close genetic relationship to this family group, supporting the belief that they were servants or staff members who had been with the Romanovs during their final moments. The next important form of DNA testing involved mitochondrial DNA, commonly called mtDNA. This type of DNA is passed down only through the mother and can be traced back through many generations. Scientists extracted mitochondrial DNA from the remains believed to belong to the Tsarina and her daughters. They then compared these samples with mtDNA from living relatives who shared the same maternal ancestry. For Tsarina Alexandra and her children, researchers compared the results with mtDNA from living members of the British royal family, who were known through historical records to share the same maternal lineage. The findings were clear and convincing. The mitochondrial DNA from the remains closely matched that of the living maternal relatives. This strong match confirmed that the female remains were indeed those of the Tsarina and her daughters. Identifying the adult male was more challenging because mitochondrial DNA cannot directly confirm a father's identity. To solve this, scientists compared mitochondrial DNA from the remains believed to be Tsar Nicholas II with mitochondrial DNA from living relatives connected to him through his maternal family line. The results showed nearly identical genetic sequences, strongly confirming that the male remains belonged to the last Tsar of Russia. Advanced testing methods were used to account for small natural variations in mitochondrial DNA that can occur even within a single individual. When the results of the STR testing and mitochondrial DNA analysis were combined, a clear and convincing picture emerged. The remains found in the mass grave belonged to a family that matched the historical Romanov family. These individuals included Tsar Nicholas II, his wife the Tsarina, and 3 of their daughters. The other 4 individuals were not family members, but matched historical records of servants and staff who were executed alongside the Romanovs. Scientists took great care to ensure the accuracy of their findings and ruled out contamination or laboratory errors. However, one mystery remained unresolved at the time. The remains of the Tsar's son, Alexei, and 1 daughter were not found in this initial excavation. Even so, the successful identification of most family members through DNA analysis was a major scientific achievement. Music. In 1993, the results were officially announced by British and Russian scientists who had collaborated on the investigation. This marked the first time modern genetic science had been used to identify remains that were more than a century old and linked to a famous royal family. The findings were widely accepted by the scientific community and represented a significant step forward in understanding the tragic end of the Romanov dynasty. By connecting the remains to living relatives, scientists solved a mystery that had remained unanswered for over 70 years. Still, questions lingered. Two of the Romanov children were missing, and their absence fueled rumors and theories about their fate. Some speculated about hidden burial sites, while others wondered if they might have survived. Researchers, historians, and archaeologists continued their search for answers. Years later, additional discoveries and further testing would finally complete the story, confirming that every member of the Romanov family had been executed and buried near Yekaterinburg. The search for the missing Romanov children. In the long effort to uncover the full truth about what happened to the Romanov family, scientists spent many years trying to complete the story. By 1991, researchers had confirmed that most members of the Romanov family were buried at a single site. However, this important discovery still left two family members missing. The unaccounted remains belonged to the heir to the throne, Tsarevich Alexei, and one of his sisters, either Maria or Anastasia. Scientists across the world understood that finding these missing bodies was the final step needed to solve the mystery completely. Interest in locating the missing Romanov children never truly disappeared. Historians and researchers carefully examined old documents, including notes written by the chief executioner in 1918, which described how the bodies were treated after the execution. According to these records, 9 bodies were buried together in one grave, while Alexei and one of his sisters were burned and buried separately. These written accounts became an important guide for future searches. Archaeologists, along with amateur history groups, began searching for this second burial site near Yekaterinburg. Over many years, several different teams attempted to locate the missing remains. Some groups discovered small bone fragments, pieces of clothing, and other evidence that suggested a second burial location existed. Even so, clear proof remained elusive for a long time. It was not until the summer of 2007 that a major breakthrough occurred. About 70 meters away from the larger mass grave, archaeologists uncovered human remains that had been severely burned and damaged. The location closely matched descriptions found in historical records, giving scientists a strong new lead to investigate. The remains discovered in 2007 were studied with great care. They included parts of a skeleton belonging to a young boy and parts of a skeleton belonging to a young woman. Because the bones were badly burned and extremely fragile, identifying them was a challenging task. Fortunately, scientists now had access to advanced scientific tools and DNA testing methods that were far more powerful than those used in the early 1990s. These improved techniques included 3 different types of DNA analysis. Mitochondrial DNA, or mtDNA, was used to compare the remains with known maternal relatives of the Romanovs. Autosomal short tandem repeat testing, known as STR analysis, examined DNA patterns to show family relationships. YSTR testing focused on genetic material passed down from father to son and was especially useful for identifying male remains. By combining all 3 methods, scientists had a strong and reliable way to analyze bones that were more than 80 years old. Scientists conducted these tests with extreme precision. The first step involved comparing the DNA from the young boy's remains with DNA taken from the previously identified remains of Tsar Nicholas II and from known living relatives. Since YSTR DNA passes directly from father to son, it allowed scientists to confirm a direct biological link. The test results showed a clear match, proving that the boy was indeed Tsarevich Alexei. This finding finally ended decades of speculation about whether the young heir to the Russian throne had survived. Further testing showed that the young woman was also genetically connected to the Romanov family through the maternal line. Her mitochondrial DNA closely matched that of Tsarina Alexandra and living maternal relatives. These results confirmed that the young woman was one of the Tsar's daughters, either Maria or Anastasia. The strength of the genetic evidence was so convincing that scientists described it as almost impossible to dispute. The discovery of Alexei and one of his sisters was far more than a small addition to the historical record. It completed the final missing pieces needed to understand where every member of the Romanov family was buried. Once the identities of the newly discovered remains were confirmed, scientists could state with confidence that all 7 children of the Romanov family had died in 1918. The complete DNA evidence proved that none of the Romanovs survived. Modern genetic science finally confirmed that the entire family was buried near Yekaterinburg. These scientific breakthroughs represented one of the most significant uses of forensic genetics in the study of history. The combination of mitochondrial DNA analysis, autosomal STR testing, and YSTR testing allowed scientists to study remains that had been damaged by time, fire, and deliberate attempts to destroy evidence. The success of these methods demonstrated that modern science could be used to solve mysteries involving historical figures. Through careful laboratory work and cooperation between international experts, researchers were able to rebuild family connections and match remains with living relatives across multiple generations.